which brought up another question, which was, which relationship do you as a man prioritize? The relationship with your wife or the relationship with your kids? And so I asked a bunch of people that question, and they said, well, with my wife. Of course, with my wife. If you just take that at face value, it sounds great.
Yeah.
But your wife actually wants you to prioritize your kids because that is her world. So I believe that a lot of people confuse care with love. And to me, love is just an energy that we all align to. It's like source, God, whatever our most wonderful selves is, that's love. And we get to share that with other people by just being in that energy. Care is something that you do for people who need you to care for them, especially for yourselves first. But then if somebody's burdened and overwhelmed, then you take care of them, right?
I want you to take a moment and think about your wife. What comes to mind? For me, it's those times when we connect deeply. When she looks at me like it's the last time she will ever see me. But it's not always that way. No, don't get me wrong. We've both been overheard saying, I love you dearly, but I don't always like you. This happens because our relationships have fallen into patterns that have put a small wedge between us. And it's not the same way as it used to be. So what do we do about that? How do we get our marriages back on track? Well, today, our guest is going to give us some insight into the hearts of our wives and to help us better understand our part in this thing called marriage. But before we get into that, I just want to remind you, if you're interested in raising your standards as a father, a husband, and an entrepreneur, then I encourage you to start your hero's quest. In this program, you're going to accomplish more, develop more, and become more in the next 90 days than you have all of last year. Now, you can get more information about this program at the Awakened Man Training Academy at members.theawakenedman.net. And with that, let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life. Many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
Welcome, everyone, to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of the Awakened Man movement and your host, Alan DeMonso. Let me ask you a couple of questions. How do you feel your marriage is failing? And do you know that your wife loves you or doesn't want you anymore? We're aware of this in some way, shape, or form. We can feel it in our bones. So you show me a couple that has been married for more than 3 years, and I'm going to show you a couple that has likely gone through a few challenges and fun seasons. And for many of us, these seasons seem to come around as often as the weather. Yet it doesn't have to be that way if we're willing to take a moment to look in the mirror and see how we, as men, are contributing to that season. Today, my guest is going to share with us a few things that we can be aware of to rebuild our marriages. So allow me to introduce my guest. Beth Rowles is the only conscious parenting and marriage coach who helps the overextended and entrepreneurial mom who feels like she's doing everything by herself to create partnership she wants with her husband without losing her marriage or her business in the process. That's powerful work. She's also the author of The Authentic Wife, Uncaging Yourself Through Marriage, and Love Him Again. Welcome to the show, Beth. How are things today?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I am too. As we were talking before we got onto the podcast today, I think it's really important for men as we're doing our men's work here that we understand and we get a perspective from our wives' position, and hoping today that we're going to be able to do that. And before we dive into that work, I just want to ask you, I ask all my guests on the show, is that we believe we're here at the Awakened Man, that we're all on a hero's quest, our own journey in life. So tell us more about what inspired you to pursue the life you live today, and how that experience has shaped you into the woman you are and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I love that question. So where to begin? What really led me directly to this work was having my daughter. When she was little, I was learning about conscious parenting from Dr. Shefali Sabari, who was on Oprah at the time. And so it really set me on a path of personal growth and figuring out because I knew at that point that while my parents did a lovely job, they didn't give me everything that I needed. And I knew that I wanted to parent differently than they had. And most of that just means I wanted to really see my children and help them feel loved and connected to me. And so I realized that conscious parenting was the way to do that. The idea is that you are awake and aware of your own stuff so you don't put it on your children. So when she was really little, I started to become a conscious parent, but at the same time, my marriage was falling apart. My husband wasn't helping out. I realized that up until she came along, I had basically been mothering him, like taking care of everything. So he just kind of disappeared. It felt like, even though I never asked him to do anything before she came, but suddenly I needed his help. And I was getting very frustrated. But my parents had divorced when I was little, and I did not want to do the same thing to my kids. I was absolutely determined not to put them through that, and very passionate about giving them both of their parents in the same house. So I went to a therapist and was like, help me figure out my expectations. And she's like, well, your husband has ADHD. That's why he's not helping. This is just the way he is. He's got kind of like a one-track mind. He's got hyper focus. He gets very into what he's doing. He doesn't even realize that you need help. So I was like, well, that's great, but what do I what do I do in the meantime? Because it's super annoying. And so I kept doing the work, learning about conscious parenting, and I still wasn't getting all the answers. And I kind of ended up making my own 6-step method after all the work that I've done, because I realized it was a combination of not just my own inner work, which was fantastic and helped me be a great parent, but I also had to take that work out into the relationship with new skills, empathy, communication, those things. But one of the biggest things I had to learn was boundaries, asking for help, receiving help, knowing how to convey what I need from him instead of like command and demand and all that good stuff. So anyway, that work saved my marriage, and now I help other women do the same thing.
Oh man, that's outstanding. And I just was, we're making a few notes here, and I just think of some of the work we're doing here at the Awakened Man. And next month, we're actually diving into the impact of the relationship that men have with their mothers, and how we bring that forward into our adulthood and into our current relationships, be that in marriage or with significant others. And I'm really appreciative of you talking about from your perspective, and not wanting to being a child of divorce, not wanting to have that be that place. And I wonder, and the other thing I noticed, you talked about the therapist. Well, he's got ADHD, and it gives, and maybe he does, but I kind of feel that would have been just the easy way out, right? And it didn't allow him to grow. And so, tell us a little bit about how you, as you were working through things, how is it that you were leading? Because we talk a lot, also we hear a lot about men in men's circles, that we need to lead our families. But tell us about, from the wife's perspective, how you were able to lead your husband towards being more active and more engaged in the marriage.
Yeah. By the way, I love the comment about mothers and sons, because I think that relationship is causing a lot of damage in the future, just because it's so hard. I find personally that it can be hard to hold the same limits with my son that I do with my daughter. It's very tempting to just let him get away with stuff. And I realize that I'm raising somebody else's future husband, and I have to have that same healthy relationship with him and hold him to the same standards. So I'd love to hear what you're doing with that. So yeah, maybe. So ADHD is really, just to very, very overgeneralize and simplify it, it's like instead of fully developing all the way in emotional maturity, they get kind of stuck at a younger age. So that's why they have like time blindness, and they don't know how to control their emotions and those kinds of things. So really, because I believe that we generally attract somebody who's a pretty good mirror of who we are, I probably have some ADHD characteristics too. And so as I kept growing and healing from my past, I became more emotionally regulated, more self-regulated. And me being that self-regulated adult is both what my kids need and what my husband needed, because that allowed him to continue to mature and grow. So just because, our relationships are reflexive and we're working off each other, the healthier I am, both in my energy, in the way I respond, in the way I work with my emotions, and the way I communicate and everything. He's got to step up and match that, instead of us both being at this dysfunctional level where we blame each other, the egos working at play, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we're focusing on this month with our Band of Brothers, our group mentorship program, is we're focusing on archetypical work, which is really understanding of boy psychology and how it manifests into man psychology. And in the first half of the month here, we've been focusing on the boy psychology, and a lot of that is derived because we get stuck in this hero complex, and we think about one of the archetypes, and you may think that the hero is positive, and it actually is, but it's really in order for men to truly raise our standards, it's really the hero must come to the point of dying, and so he can turn into and become the warrior. And what that requires is for men is to learn to become vulnerable and give us opportunity to step up and have the challenging conversations that we were afraid of doing. I know there was a time in my marriage when we were going through our seasons that I would have rather eaten broken glass than have a conversation with my wife.
That's funny that you say that, because I teach women I work with them for 6 months, and not until month 5 did we talk about empathy, because they are not even willing to do it. But then what I noticed, and I was just talking to a client about this today, is then their men, and my husband did this too, react so what are you doing? Why are you repeating what I'm saying? Why are you telling me what I'm feeling? It's so foreign to them to be held in a way that allows them to process whatever they're feeling. So.
Absolutely, because we've been taught as boys to not show feelings, to control that, right? To control, not get too rambunctious. Kids are, in my generation, kids are to be seen and not heard, and a lot of my work is with the men in that from my generation, and so it's a challenge for us, and so it's a skill to develop, and it takes time to do that, and being able to be in an environment where we can learn that those habits helps us to show up better for our families. But one of the things I noticed in getting prepared for doing our work today is you talk about how men are putting strain on our wives. So what are we doing to put all this strain on our wives? And is it just that we're not showing up to help around the house, or is it much more than that?
So one of the top complaints that I had and that my clients have is that our husbands would come in, they'd either, because they're not processing anything and they are just ignoring all those emotions, they're just these balls of, they're like a ticking time bomb and ready to go off. And they think nobody knows because they're being these nice stoic hero men, but we feel your energy. And so and basically it's fear, at the root of it is some kind of fear. And it's really hard for women because we're conditioned to give everything and take care of everybody. And so we have terrible boundaries. We don't know where we end. We don't know where you begin. We sense the energy or the frequency of that fear and we match it. So it brings us down into a bad mood with you. And so then we have to create up a story to match this fear energy. And we say, he's terrible. He's never going to be a good dad. This marriage is never going to work. I need to leave. And so it's this constant cycling of you come in really struggling in some kind of really low energy. And then we match it and we don't like that. And we think you're a threat to our children or to us. And so then we think we have to go. And then all these divorce stories start to spiral. I don't know, that makes sense. But that's the number one visit to my website right now is because of a man coming in with I used to describe it as I would feel so happy and like I'm a balloon floating in the sky, and he would walk in the door and yank the cord and pull me down to earth with him and just feel really low and miserable.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I think because a lot a lot of the times that as men, we sleepwalk through life, and we're very singular minded focused, right? Like we're task oriented. So when we're in work mode, we tend to be able to, just get things done. We're in a do state all day long, every day. And the challenge for us is to be able to recognize that whatever that commute time is to come home, can we shift that into a being mode? What does that look like? And this is the questions we ask our men, is how would you want your wife to show up if the roles were reversed? And how can you show up and be a leader for the home? And I think once men start to think about that, it totally is true that we get lulled into this idea of how things are. And again, it goes back to a lot of times into the work that happened with us as children. We had fathers that had to work hard and spent a lot of time, were very stoic, didn't necessarily share. I can tell you, well, my father's no longer with us. I don't ever remember him saying that he loved me. I just knew that he did, because he was home every day and he worked really hard. And there were other ways that he showed. But as children growing up, are we, and we become into boys to men, then we become fathers. What is the experience that we want to provide our children? And I think as men, we don't necessarily think about it that way. I think we're so locked into doing mode. I don't know if you're finding that as well.
Yeah. No, I posted on social media the other day, who do you know that has a good relationship with their father? What son do you know that has a good relationship with their father? We could only think of one out of all the people I know. And which brought up another question which relationship do you as a man prioritize? The relationship with your wife or the relationship with your kids? And so I asked a bunch of people that question, and they said, well, with my wife, of course, with my wife. And I think that, like, if you just take that at face value, it sounds great.
Yeah.
But your wife actually wants you to prioritize your kids, because that is her world. And they are the ones who are actually dependent and needy and need the adults in their life to take care of them. And for their happiness, for their success in life, they're going to function best if they have a healthy relationship with the father and with their mother. Like the period that your kids are young and in your home is so short in the grand scheme of things. I think as wives, we're like, I love you and let's have dates and stuff, but can we focus on them for 18 years? And then we've got all this time at the back end that we're going to get sick of each other. So just take care of them first. Help me take care of them as well. And that will improve our relationship.
Absolutely. And while I'm not surprised to hear, because I would have said the same thing, that the priority would have been on my spouse, but we forget that that doesn't mean we just focus on our wives. And, helping men understand that making her a priority means stepping into her world. What are the things that are important for her? And when we can look at that and become more conscious fathers and more conscious of the household, and be able to participate in that, then we truly are putting her first, because we're doing the things that mean the most, that provides the most, value, for lack of a better term, to the marriage and to the family unit.
Because otherwise the weight of all of your children's needs are solely on her, and she's exhausted and has no time to sleep with you. And I know, from experience, that's every man's complaint is, give me more in the bedroom. Well, if we're exhausted, we can't. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I don't have to be sorry. We
Right?
Totally get it. And that's the work on our end to do, is to help understand that the dynamic needs to change. The dynamic for how we show up as men needs to change. And that's why it's important, and grateful that you're doing the work that you're doing. And on our end, we're looking to change men's lives and their perspective about what's truly important in the greater scheme of times.
Thank you so much for doing that work, because it's so needed right now.
Like as I said earlier, there's always seasons. All relationships and marriages go through different seasons, and I can tell you during the darker times of my relationship and my marriage that the one thing that we realized is we realized we really didn't know how to fight, let alone even fighting at all. We were that couple that would, we would never fight at all. We would just push it under the rug. Or my tendency was I would ask the question, is this going to matter in a year from now? Or is this the hill I'm going to die on? And while that's great to take a moment and take the steam and the energy out of it so you can come back and show up more empowered, it doesn't serve us when we use that as a catch-all and never be able to engage. So tell me a little bit about the advice that you would give wives and potentially the husbands about how we can consciously be awake of how we can step in and have that conversation, even if that turns into a fight, and how do we show up without pushing all of our wife's buttons?
Good luck. And you don't push her buttons get pushed, and that's for her to heal. I'm really big on personal responsibility and being differentiated, healthy adults and taking ownership over our own pains and upsets. But I do teach that once you are feeling good and healthy, then you can help the other person feel good and healthy by helping them process too. The biggest thing for communication. So I believe that a lot of people confuse care with love. And to me, love is just an energy that we all align to. It's like source, God, whatever our most wonderful selves is, that's love. And we get to share that with other people by just being in that energy. Care is something that you do for people who need you to care for them, especially for yourselves first. But then if somebody's burdened and overwhelmed, then you take care of them, right? The way that I feel that love is actually expressed is through being a mirror for somebody else to see themselves. When you can show somebody who they are and see in them what they may not even see in themselves, then they feel the most loved because they are finally being recognized. People love to see themselves and learn more about themselves. And so the biggest communication thing that I teach that I think is valuable is to, number one, be able to fully see yourself. And then number two, be able to do that for your family, for your kids, for your husband, show them who they are. And when they are blind to who you are, you need to communicate that. You need to vulnerably share what you're worried. I teach a way of communication I call sharing your WOV, WOV. And I tell women, communicate your worry, whatever you're worried about, and not necessarily in this order. Your observation, what's going on, like the trash is full, the kids are dirty, whatever it is. We'll just factually state what's happening. And then share your vision, because you can't control another human, but you can motivate and inspire them by sharing what you would like to happen, the way you'd like to live, the way you'd like this talk to go, the way you'd like this night to go. And he gets to decide if he wants to step into that and help you with it or not. And when you share your worry, he gets to decide if he's can help fix that problem, because I think men have really wonderful brains and women do too, but men love to use those brains and go, oh, a problem, let me fix it for you, because I feel like you all naturally just really want to serve your woman and make her happy. But a lot of women today just kind of skip that step and they solve the problem in their head, and then they say, okay, I need you to do this, this, and this. And the man's like, why? Like, I don't know why, what's in it for me to do that? And they take the fun out of it because they don't get to solve it themselves. And then they feel controlled and stuff. So that is the short answer what I think about communication.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's an amazing answer for sure. One of the things we talked about in February, we talked about how the masculine shows up in relationship. And one of the things that it's my takeaway from hearing you tell that story was that we also talked about how men can lead by using invitation. And that's exactly what you just said, demonstrated there was an invitation. It's more open, it's just more accepting when you're being invited to hear a vision or participate versus being told. And I think that's just a human thing. That's not a man or a woman thing. That's just a human thing. We prefer the invitation versus the order. And I think when we learn to do that, things start to shift and change. And yes, in the beginning, it's going to be messy and it's not going to come off great. And that's part of of those of us that are perfectionists have to overcome, and to step in and do that, and allow it to be messy. And maybe that's the precursor to it, that you announce that this might be messy, and because it's still an invite, it gives our spouses an opportunity to, okay, he's trying, and to be more open to hear what's going to be said.
Well, that reminds me of when you share that, like the dishwasher's full, or like the dishes are dirty or something. And then you say, well, you can't load the dishwasher that way, or you have to put it away this way. And we tend to be such control freaks as women that we want to talk to them. Like, you have to let it be his way for a while. You have to let him learn the best way to do it, if that's normally your domain. Like, he's going to change a diaper wrong. He's going to feed the kids wrong. He's going to not do what you would have done, but that's because he's got to learn too. Like, what's the best way to do this? What do the kids prefer? What works best for me when I do this? So you
Yeah.
can't micromanage the the job.
Yeah, and that's the work of the men. That's the work on the men's side. On our side, to be able to take those opportunities as a learning experience for both, right? And so, because and I'm really looking forward to diving into this work next month with our guys on this. I go back, to understanding the relationship between mothers and sons, and many of us men have truly never detached from her, and so we have this capital M mother goddess image, and we tend to fall into this pattern, and that's what happens in our relationships. And so, as you were saying earlier, you felt that you needed to mother him, and that's because we need to do some more work as men to step out of that space and be more present, and for us too, to learn how to set effective boundaries that allows the relationship to grow and change. And we're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. And that's the part about growing as a couple and learning more through each other's actions.
I love that. I'm so excited for you doing that work.
Mike, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I was going to say, in my conversation with men, one of the things we find is that there are three things we need, and you may agree or disagree, and this will be an interesting conversation. The three things that men need is, we need to feel that we're respected. The next thing that we need to feel is that we need to feel that we're validated somehow. And finally, as men, we need to feel that we're wanted. So it's pretty common for them to think, thinking about the work that you're doing, and the work that I'm doing, I think it's pretty common for men to think that, if he's failing in his marriage because he believes that maybe his wife no longer loves him, or he no longer wants him, what can we do as men? What would you recommend? What's happening? What are we doing that's causing this? And what could we do to help change that situation?
Yeah. So from my perspective, those are inner child needs more than what you need right now in the present. It feels like you need them in the present. I mean, of course, everybody should be respected. If your wife is talking down to you, you need to walk away from that and say, that's unacceptable. You can't talk to me like that. Just like I would coach a woman to do if her husband was doing that. Yeah. But one of the things that we have to know is that whatever we needed from our parents, we can give to ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that longing, that need underneath whatever it is we're feeling, is always something that we're being asked to do for ourselves, because we are no longer dependent on another adult to take care of us in that way. And it's terrible that we didn't get what we needed when we were little. It's a shame, but we can do something called reparenting, where you meet that little child in you with empathy and give them what they needed then and continue to give it to them now. So for a lot of women, they want to feel worthy. That would be like one of those top 3 things for us. And so they're always hustling for their worth. They're always doing everything, making the right dinner, taking care of the kids right, feeling like they need to bring in money or whatever. But that is an inside job. You have to know that you are worthy from the inside, because if you don't know it with every fiber of your being, then you're not going to ever feel satisfied from somebody telling you that from the outside, because they aren't going to be able to give it to you. Most people are not at that level where they've healed enough where they could even know that about themselves. So for for men, I'd say, do you respect yourself? Do you validate yourself? And then I forgot what your last one was already.
Be wanted.
Wanted. Do you want yourself? What do you need the external telling you that you're wanted? And I get it. I know that everybody wants to feel significance. Women want validation and appreciation as well. And there's just not a lot of people in the world who can do that for you, who are already awakened and conscious, who can see your contribution or how awesome you are without feeling threatened. There are so few people who can actually be at that place of love where they can do that for you. So you have to be able to do it inside first, I would say. Don't depend on your wife to do those things for you, because all of it will just naturally occur as you heal yourself and you share that with her. And if she does the work, she's already going to feel that way. So she's going to just naturally, show you that you are. And the other thing I will say is, if your wife is still in the house, she wants you. We are very clear when we don't want somebody that we will leave. So if she's still around, especially after you put her through hell, she wants you. She's not like jumping all over your body, but that's because you're in a different season of life. You're still wanted if she's still there.
100%. And I appreciate that response, because that would be the exact same thing we would teach our men as well, as that. Do you want these things? Are you want yourself? How are you showing up and taking personal responsibility for your life? Because when we be the man we want to be, I always say I know men are ready to make massive change in their life when they're ready to take responsibility for three things. The first one is where they are in life, because every decision they've made, every action they've taken has landed into exactly where they are. So you got to take responsibility for where you are. Second thing we need to take responsibility as men is for who we are. Again, goes back to all those decisions and actions. And the third one is, who do we aspire to become? And that's the one that we tend to forget a lot, is that requires us to change the way we show up every day. We show up with purposeful intention. And when we can do that, things start to change and open for us. And so this work that you're doing and helping women is very, very similar to what we're doing for men. So I'm truly grateful for you doing that.
I'm so excited.
One of the things one of the very first things that I was learning about and helping, fix some of the challenges that were in my marriage. And I read Gary Chapman's book, The 5 Love Languages, and we ran out quickly, and we got the book, and I did the test, and my wife loves, receiving gifts is her love language. But that, while in a way can be effective, it can also be a trap for men and for us to fall into. So what are your thoughts about Gary's work? I know it's been around for a long time, but what are your thoughts about the work, and what do we need to be conscious about this?
Well, first of all, you should know that his work has been debunked. It was a great idea, but it's not been proven as improving relationships.
Yeah.
They actually found in a study that the woman in the relationship's own self-regulation, which is what we've been talking about, was more impactful to the health of the relationship than anything else. And this goes back to what I said earlier about how we confuse care with love. Those are all acts of care. Yeah. And most people aren't even taking care of themselves. So there's if you think of the gas tank, there's nothing in the tank to go take care of you too, usually, because we're never refilling it ourselves. So if you think that you need all those things, do them for yourself first. If you were actually, because we're in a relationship though, if you were actually overwhelmed, if you were actually burdened beyond your ability, like you're sick or you've lost a job or something, you're disabled or something, then your wife is there or your husband is there to care for you. But we're adults and we care for ourselves, and we then have a full energy tank, and we have all this love and energy to share with others. If you keep looking outside for somebody, if you keep depending on somebody to fill your tank, you're going to be let down and disappointed every time.
Absolutely. 100%. So true. So true. The work we've been talking about all day, this entire podcast here and interview is really about leaving legacy. And so I ask you, as all this work, if you were to fast forward to 20 years from now and looking back to what you're doing, what would legacy look like for you?
That gave me chills. I love that question. For me, it would be that children no longer have to recover from their childhood. And I feel like this is just a piece of that, but it's a huge piece. This is what's creating a lot of the trauma and disconnect. And I feel like it's the root cause of almost every big problem we have out there, is that we don't go home and love our own families. We don't love ourselves. So we don't love our families. We get concerned with external things and try to fix the world out there. And inside our homes, everything's just falling apart. And our children pay the price. It's a shame.
They sure do. They sure do.
Mhm.
That was powerful. I love that. So closing question for you. If there was, of everything that we spoke about today, and maybe there was something we didn't get a chance to touch on, what would be the one takeaway you'd want our listeners to have?
Ooh. I would desperately want for some of my clients' husbands right now to go work with you and do the inner work, because it's not her that's the problem. It's not him that's the problem. It's always something inside.
That's outstanding. And for sure, we're doing our best, both of us in both our spheres, to help create that strong family unit. And I just know that as this work continues on, that's exactly what's going to happen. So I just want to say thank you so much, Beth, for spending time with me today. I think we've been able to help men understand how we show up in marriages really can make a huge difference, not just in our wives' life, but also in the family unit. And when we can change the family unit, we start to change our communities. And we change our communities, and we start to change the world. And so if men or women are interested in getting a hold of you and participating in your programs, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, thank you. They can find me at theauthenticwifeandmom.com. I have a program called Happily Ever After. I take them through for 6 months, and then I have some smaller programs that they can purchase as well. But it's a lot of work. I've been told it's deep work, but it's amazing for everybody, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I really appreciate you being on the show, and thank you so much for all the work you're doing, and keep up the great work.
Thank you. You as well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.